Oh, hi, Mark. Evil Dead Rise is the second to latest Evil Dead movie. The newest one being Evil Dead Burn, which is out in theaters either now or very soon, like within a day or two of now. And so I had seen Evil Dead Rise before. Oh, that's right. It's directed by Lee Cronin, and I don't remember who it stars. I gotta be honest. Um, because I don't do research. But hey, uh, here we go. It stars Lily Sullivan, Alyssa Sutherland, Morgan Davies, Gabrielle Eccles, and that's all that's on the back here. So that's all you're getting out of me. I really like this movie. And I kind of always forget how much I like Evil Dead Rise. Um, because I always remember it as potentially my least favorite Evil Dead movie. I can say pretty conclusively after watching this time, I don't think it's my least favorite. I think my least favorite is actually Army of Darkness upon rewatch. So, I mean, let me tell you what I like about Evil Dead Rise. First of all, this movie's intense. It's way more intense than I remember it. It has some crazy shit in there, dude. It has some nasty, mean spirited lines, and I love that. The demons in this movie aren't playing no games. And I kind of understand. I mentioned in the last video that at least uh, one YouTube critic, or I guess two YouTube critics, uh, that I've watched before, which would be Mike and Jay from We Watched a Movie. I used to watch them quite a bit, and in the 2013 Evil Dead reboot review, they had said that it kind of sounds like the demons in there were written by like fifth graders because they're cussing all over the place. I understand definitely how you would prefer this kind of demon in terms of the dialogue, because this the demons in here go after like a really deeply personal place, and like they don't actually curse much at all. um Matter of fact, I think there's only like four curse words in the whole movie, maybe two only that stand out to me. Um, Maybe three. I'm not sure, but like they don't curse much. They just say really nasty things and they're very troublesome. The amount of just very creepy, gets under your skin moments that is in Evil Dead Rise are actually astonishing. And I always forget just how intense this movie is, which is totally my bad. I haven't watched Evil Dead Rise near enough. Um, it's really good though, and as I said, the dialogue when they're possessed is nasty. Things like, I gotta kill the creepy crawlies that I got in my tummy. I don't like things in my tummy. Do you, Aunt Maggie, or whatever her name is? Uh, or yeah, really anything the mother says. The mother character in this, by the way, her performance is. Now, I will say, from someone who, this is probably my second to least favorite Evil Dead movie, I think her performance, what is her name? It is, I believe she's Alyssa Sutherland. I believe that's her name. Alyssa Sutherland's performance as the mother is the the scariest performance in any Evil Dead movie, hands down. It is her face and the way that the makeup works with her face and those awesome contact lenses that they have in her, or maybe it's CGI, I don't know, but they're so intense. Um, some of the best like demonic eyes I've ever seen in a movie, which is kind of a niche compliment, but it is definitely a compliment, and one that I don't know. I feel like that's a worthwhile thing to compliment, because usually demonic eyes look kind of corny, and they certainly don't in this movie. She has such an interesting face and such a unique face that when they put the demon makeup on her, she's terrifying. And it also goes into her performance. It's not just the makeup, it is absolutely her performance as the demonic version of that character. It is horrific. This movie has some of the gnarly scenes in it, like the things that happen to the characters that you're like, oh god. But I will say they're not as troublesome as some of the some of the other ones from like the original Evil Dead or Evil Dead 2013. Like I think in this movie, a couple of the big ones would be like the girl swallowing the glass, and you see it just like barely poke through the skin in her throat. And I feel like there's a couple other ones as well that you're like, oh god, no. Maybe like when the elevator cables lift up the mother character and it breaks her arm. That looks pretty gnarly, but I don't think it has anything on like the machete across the kneecap from Evil Dead 2013, or like the needle in the eye, or in the original Evil Dead when she stabs him in the ankle with the pencil and she's like just twisting it around in his ankle. That's gnarly. But this movie does ultimately have probably the third best that type of scene in the franchise. Of course, Evil Dead 2 didn't really have anything like that, and Army of Darkness was far from having anything like that. So I appreciate that here. But aside from the disturbing dialogue and the great makeup effects and the great performance from the mother character, I thought the rest of the characters had really great performances too. My apologies, the actors portraying the characters had great performances in the movie, as well as all the characters are really likable in this movie, which also is something I always kind of forget, how they really seem like they're a really good portrayal of like a little family, you know? They're hardly ever at each other's throats. They really seem to have each other's back. They really feel like they care for each other, which is really nice. It's different from a lot of other horror films in the sense that like there's a scene in this film where a little girl is she's scared and she's turning to her older trans brother, and she's like, Stephanie will protect us, right? And the trans brother character is like, yeah, Stephanie will protect us. And I don't know why, but right there in that moment, I was expecting him to be like, no, like, no, Stephanie's not going to protect us. Well, actually, what I expected him to do is, would you put that thing away? Or like something like that. Like, that felt like a very normal horror movie response of like just annoyance in the moment. But it's very clear that the writers actually wrote these people to, you know, be family that love each other and they're trying to comfort one another. That's really good. And I know I point at that scene specifically as though that's just like some masterclass in writing, but it's all the scenes really. It's just that one specifically jumps out at me as like, this could have been what I think it would have been in most horror movies, if that makes sense. They sort of change the demons in this movie a little bit, where it seems like they're just completely relentless. You can't get rid of them, which is a departure from, I mean, what they are in the Evil Dead or Evil Dead 2013, because there's always a way to get rid of the Deadites, right? Yeah, not really in Evil Dead Rise. Sorry if you haven't seen the movie, but it came out in what, 2021? 2022, I think. Sure, we'll go with it. And yeah, there's not really in this movie. Like, she throws him through a wood chipper, and the Deadite is still around. And it ends up possessing that girl that we see in the beginning of the movie. So yeah, very relentless. So they fuse together and make some kind of weird amalgamation family monster. That was strange. I will say, there are a few things I don't love about this movie, which is ultimately, I think, why it's been like my second least favorite Evil Dead movie. And those things they're little detractors. I mean, ultimately it is just a series of little detractors. Things like, I don't love the opening, like the performances in the opening. I thought all of those actors were pretty not great. And I understand that's a very small segment of the movie. We don't have to spend a lot of time with them, but it doesn't make it any less that way, you know what I mean? And it's kind of almost cringy there in the beginning. And then some of the visual effects are very off in this movie. And I don't know exactly what that was. Maybe that was budget constraints, but there is some CGI in here, which, by the way, an Evil Dead movie with CGI is unfortunate. I'm sure there was CGI to some extent in Evil Dead 2013, maybe, but it's like barely noticeable, if noticeable at all, in that movie. And in this movie, when something CGI happens, you go, oh yeah, that's fucking CGI. And it happens, I mean, during some of the gore scenes, you know, when sometimes, like, if something gross is happening, the gross thing will be CGI, you know, like all the roaches that are on the book towards the beginning of the movie, and they all fly, and it's just a big CGI swarm of roaches. Those are just small things in this movie that I think are just kind of ugly. However, there is something else in regards to the way the movie looks that I don't love, and that is some of the camera work here. I understand what they're going for, and I won't even say that I hate it, because I don't really hate it. You know, I think it's fine, but at the same time, it's kind of jarring. It almost feels comedic, and I'm not sure how that is. I'm not sure how it feels comedic, because what's happening on screen isn't comedic at all. But like the scene where they're looking through the peephole, and the camera is focused on the peephole, and you just see her walking around in the halls and like going after all the neighbors and just being a general menace. There's something about that feels like, I don't know, it feels really hokey. And there are a few other scenes where the camera work just makes me feel like it's less than ideal for my tastes. And I feel like they were trying to emulate a bit of those Raimi-isms from the original Evil Dead movies. I just don't feel like it works here. Evil Dead Rise is a really serious horror movie, and I feel like those sorts of shots work in Raimi movies because they're all at least a little goofy. Evil Dead Rise didn't really feel like it was going for goofy at any point. Much like Evil Dead 2013. There might have been one part, and I found that jarring too, because this is such a serious movie, and there's this scene where the mother character jumps on a guy and she bites his eyeball out, spits it out, and it lands in another guy's mouth and he chokes to death on the eyeball. That's kind of stupid. And like I say, that I think that in like a Raimi movie that would have been fine. Here it doesn't feel, it feels very out of place. Um, there was one more thing that I was thinking of that I just wasn't particularly huge on in this movie. Well, actually, let me go back to some things I like. Um, the way the Deadites move in this movie is disturbing. Like the mother character in particular. That woman needs a raise. I don't know what her take home was from this movie, but it needs to be higher because she is terrifying in every facet. Absolutely every way that a character can be terrifying, she is terrifying. The way she moves, the scene where she like jumps out of the bathtub and she's like arched up in the archway of the ceiling, that's terrifying. I really do love her character when she's like crouched down over in the darkness after getting hit with the chair. It's all very scary stuff. And another thing that I really like about this movie, and it makes me sound like a psycho every single time I say it, but it's not afraid to put children in danger. And again, that makes me sound like a psycho whenever I say it. But that is what makes this movie unpredictable. Like, most horror movies will not hurt children, because they understand that in most cases, the audience, that's like a sensitive spot for them. Children and animals. And I kind of agree about animals, but as far as children are concerned in movies, I view it more so as this movie is showing you that it doesn't care. Like, there's no logic to that. Like, when I see a horror movie kill a dog, especially like in a mean-spirited way, I'm like, okay, so like kind of fuck you though, right? Kind of fuck you because you did that, But I like dogs a lot, but I don't know, when a horror movie has a child death in it, I'm like, that's ballsy. And this movie has a couple of them. This movie gets pretty graphic and disturbing with some of them, actually. And thankfully, I would say probably the two most likable characters survive, and that's good news for me. I wanted them to get out of it. Though it doesn't ever show what happens to them. I assume the adult character was arrested because she was just covered head to toe in blood, and there was just like a river of blood in the parking garage. Oh, that was another thing I will say that I do not love about the movie is the dumb little foreshadowing with the wood chipper. Because it almost comes across as goofy when movies do that. When the camera pans over and you see the wood chipper, and you're like, oh, it's gonna be a thing later in the movie, and oh, look at that, it's the big climax. And as well as like the amalgamation monster, that might be a little much. I don't know, that might be just a little bit much. The big, like, it's disturbing, but it's that it might be just a little bit too much. But that scene does have a nice one-liner. There are some callbacks to classic Evil Dead movies in here, and the one-liner she drops towards the end of the film is "Come get some," which I believe is an Army of Darkness line at the end of the movie when in S-Mart he's like, "Hey, she bitch, come get some." I think that's what it's a callback to. But anyway, overall, Evil Dead Rise is a really, really solid entry in the Evil Dead franchise. And if Evil Dead Burn is even 3/4 of the way as good as Evil Dead Rise, I'll be pretty satisfied. Burn, I'm pretty sure, isn't it directed by the same guy who made Infested, that spider movie from a couple of years ago? So I don't know. I'm excited to see that. But Evil Dead Rise, I watched it just now. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. In hindsight, it having like a point 0.5 less of a rating than Evil Dead 2013 feels wrong. Maybe that movie should have been like a 9, but whatever. Evil Dead Rise, I think 8 is a perfect rating for it, and it is a really, 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 really solid horror movie. If you haven't seen Evil Dead Rise, I'm sorry I spoiled it for you. First of all, I'm sorry, the movie's a few years old. If I'm reviewing a new movie, I always do my best when I review like new movies, theatrical movies, to not spoil them. But when I'm reviewing a movie that's been out for a few years, I just let it out. But if you haven't seen Evil Dead Rise, I seriously recommend you do it. And honestly, if you haven't seen any of the Evil Dead movies, watch the ones you haven't seen, because every single one of them so far is worth a watch. I swear to God, if they fuck this franchise up. Dude, this franchise is going ballistic. It hasn't had a bad entry. Do you have any idea how insane that is? Let's see, what is it at this point? 5? Yeah, there's 5 Evil Dead movies. I'm not counting the TV show. I haven't seen the TV show. I saw like the first episode of it. I don't watch TV shows as often as I should, so I didn't watch all of it. But 5 mainline entries in the movies, and then Burn is the 6th one, and then there's going to be another one. Keep making them, and keep making them good. Just keep bringing in new talent. Dude, I want Curry Barker to make an Evil Dead movie. That would be sick. That would be awesome. Give me the Obsession guy for the next Evil Dead movie. That would be amazing. But anyway, guys, I'll catch you on the next one. And the next one is hopefully Evil Dead Burn.